89.3 WBLD Orchard Lake, West Bloomfield, Kego Harbor, Sylvan Lake. 89.3 Lakes FM. It's the Megacast, an hour-long TV and radio streaming show keeping you informed on the day-to-day news. Live from West Bloomfield, we're bringing you the news, updates, and information impacting communities around Michigan. Join our host, Tyler Kieft, as he talks with community members, business leaders, and professional experts about the stories that impact you. You're watching the Megacast on Civic Center TV.
When the temperatures are chilly, being together warms the soul. Keep the winter fun going. Help protect yourself and those around you by keeping your COVID-19 vaccines up to date. Can I ask you a question? Why do you want to get the COVID-19 vaccine?
I don't like getting sick.
The virus will die.
It will be easy to not catch it. Keep my family safe and keep playing soccer. Because I love being vaccinated.
What's your hope for everyone?
I hope everybody gets the vaccine.
To keep safe and strong.
Be happy, having fun everywhere. Everyone stay safe and hope you get the vaccine.
1 in 4 Michigan homes has high levels of radon, a naturally occurring radioactive gas known to cause lung cancer. It doesn't matter where you live or what type of home you have. You won't even know it's there unless you test. So don't wait. Testing is cheap and easy. And if there's a problem, it's simple to fix. Visit michigan.gov/radon to learn more.
We took action. Will you?
Hello, nose. My nose knows when somebody uses the bathroom. Mom, Pauline is flush. Ooh, I smell cookies.
I smell an A+. How could my nose be running when it stays on my face?
Our noses know if those sniffles are just a cold, allergies, or COVID-19. So swab it. Test it. It's good to know.
Let's savor these moments. Made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the dining out going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date.
My Michigan TV is streaming everywhere on Apple TV, Roku, Fire TV, and more smart TV apps. My Michigan TV is on your phone too. Take us with you wherever you go. Just search for My Michigan TV on your favorite app store or visit mymitv.com. All Michigan, streaming everywhere. My Michigan TV.
Wondering what to say to someone who's been sexually assaulted or abused?
I believe you. I'm so sorry this happened.
It's not your fault.
Confidential and anonymous help is available at the Michigan Sexual Assault Hotline. Connect with us 24/7. Call 855-VOICES-4 or text 1-866-238-1454 for help. Learn more at michigan.gov/voices4. Let's relish these moments, made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the festivals going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date.
I'm Steve Eiserman of the Detroit Red Wings, and I think every child in Michigan deserves a safe, healthy, and happy childhood. Can we build a state where Children Trust Michigan isn't just a name, but something our kids believe? Please support Children Trust Michigan as the voice for children and families by visiting the website to learn more.
Now that the vaccine is available for children 5 and up, why do you recommend it?
Kids are part of the community and they can spread COVID.
We're seeing both healthy children getting sick from the virus as well as children with underlying health conditions.
They can easily bring the virus home to other people that are vulnerable and make them sick as well.
This vaccine can change that and keep children safe.
It's essential that your children get vaccinated to protect them, to protect your families, and to protect those in the community around you.
There are many different kinds of noses. Our noses can sniff out all kinds of things. Good things and bad things. Your nose knows if those sniffles are just a cold, allergies, or COVID-19. So swab it. Test it. It's good to know.
You're listening to your radio homes for the Megacast, 89.3 WBLD, Orchard Lake, and 88.1 WBFH, Bloomfield Hills. Today's edition of the Megacast begins now. Welcome to the Megacast, our live daily TV, radio, and streaming show talking about all things Michigan. I'm Tyler Kieft. Today we'll be talking to a number of people about topics of interest and importance to Michiganders just like you. Let's begin with what's making headlines on our website, civiccentertv.com, on our local news page. Our top story comes from Frank Witzel and Miriam Marini from the Detroit Free Press. Law enforcement across Michigan was on alert on Tuesday as a rush of school shooting reports were submitted across the entire state. Locations including Detroit, Jackson, Ann Arbor, Okemos, Battle Creek, Muskegon, and Saginaw all had reports of a school shooting at their local locations called in to authorities, in which police then had to create a, quote, coordinated campaign in order to adjust to and prevent any sort of incident at those schools, as well as investigate whether or not anything had taken place. The FBI has taken over the case as a result, as these concerning calls were made across the entire state of Michigan just a day following a number of bomb threats being called into Walmart locations in Oakland and Wayne counties. Attorney General Dana Nessel, in a statement, responded to the events saying, quote, "Threats of violence in our schools disrupt our classroom, tax our local law enforcement agencies, and harm our students' sense of safety, whether these are real threats made by those intent on doing harm or pranks made by kids trying to get a day off, they are real crimes with real consequences," end closed quote. That is a true fact. Threats of this kind may result in sentences of jail or prison time, as well as fines upwards of $50,000. The FBI on Tuesday released a statement as their investigation was underway on the matter, saying, quote, "Agents are working alongside our local and state law enforcement partners to identify the source of the hoax threats. Due to the ongoing investigation, we are unable to provide more details," end closed quote. As for the reach of the threats, FBI Detroit office spokesperson Mara Schneider says, at this time, there were no known threats made outside of the state of Michigan of this kind on Tuesday. Law enforcement on the local and statewide level responded to the calls at locations throughout the state that came under threat on Tuesday. All of this just under 15 months following the tragic school shooting at Oxford High School. Also making headlines today on our local news page from Sarah Rahal at the Detroit News. Michigan added 5,799 COVID-19 cases in the past week, as well as 119 deaths. That shows a continued trend of declining case numbers in the Great Lakes state, a trend that has been ongoing since October of last year, according to the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. The average caseload over the past week came out to just below 830 cases per day at 828. That an 11% decrease from the previous report a week ago. Michigan eclipsed 3 million cases for the pandemic in January of this year, just months shy of 3 years from the pandemic's declaration by the World Health Organization, and states of emergency declared locally, statewide, federally, and around the world. Finally making headlines today on our local news page on CivicCenterTV.com from Bridge, Michigan's Mike Wilkinson. Data released on Tuesday about the 2022 election showed that the young voter impact was not as strong as suspected on Election Day proper. The turnout, however, was significant statewide, reaching the highest midterm election turnout by the Michigan electorate in state history. But how much of that of an impact did those long lines of students we saw waiting to cast their ballots throughout the night at Michigan State, at the University of Michigan, and other educational institutions, how much did that really have on the outcome of the election and this year's turnout? Despite all the images we saw on our television screens and other news publications, the Secretary of State's office reported that just 37.2% of those voters 30 and younger turned out in 2022, which is actually 5% lower than was the case in 2018. In fact, it was elder populations that had the largest individual demographic turnouts, with ages 60 and older having a 70.6%, 9.5% turnout among women. So overall, women outvoted men in Michigan by about 4%. And while young voters made their way to the polls with great enthusiasm, it was our older voters and our women who had the greatest individual turnout by demographics in 2022 for the midterm elections. All those headlines, including much more detail on each one of those stories from those great journalists across the state of Michigan, are on our website, CivicCenterTV.com. On our local news page, click on the headline link or on the thumbnail picture just to the left of those stories to read them in full, and other supporting materials on those stories from these local journalists across the state of Michigan. Also on our local news page, you'll find COVID-19 updates from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, as well as the Oakland County Health Division updated on the daily. We have a great show ahead on this Wednesday edition of the Megacast. Coming up next, we'll check in with Aubrey Lee from Merrill Lynch Wealth Management to check in on some of your New Year's resolutions for your finances and your future financial goals. This is the Megacast.
In the face of COVID-19, staying healthy is important.
And now the same is true in the face of flu.
Influenza has the power to infect millions.
But it's easy to protect yourself, your family, and your community.
The flu vaccine is safe and effective. And with COVID-19 still around,
it's essential. Together we can face flu season head on.
Visit michigan.gov/flu.
Many people are feeling overwhelmed and struggling with mental wellness these days. So be kind to your mind. Give yourself permission to breathe. Share your feelings. You are not alone. Have hope. Talk to a Stay Well counselor for free confidential help 24/7 through the COVID-19 hotline.
Welcome back to the Megacast, our live daily TV, radio, and streaming show talking about all things Michigan. I'm Tyler Kieft. Learn more on our website, CivicCenterTV.com/Megacast, where you'll find information on all of our partnering stations across Oakland County and throughout the state of Michigan, and find all of our full shows and each individual interview segment on demand as well. CivicCenterTV.com/Megacast, the place to go for all of that. Well, believe it or not, we are nearly a quarter of the way into the 2023 calendar year. And what better time than now to check in on some of your New Year's resolutions, including some of your financial resolutions as well. Here to give us some tips and tricks on checking in on your finances thus far in 2023 is Aubrey Lee, the Senior Vice President of Merrill Lynch Wealth Management. Aubrey, thanks for being with us today.
Tyler, it's really a pleasure to be with you. Had a chance to listen to you for a few minutes here. You do a nice job, and it's nice to be with you.
Thank you. I appreciate having you on, and certainly appreciate the compliment as well. So, Aubrey, at this time of the year, it's around the time where people start to maybe wean off of their New Year's resolutions. The enthusiasm is kind of going away, but when it comes to your finances, you got to stick to them all the time. Those resolutions can't go away, like going to the gym or going for a walk every single day. Those things you can take a little while off and come back to. When it comes to your finances, you really want to be checking in all the time. What should people be doing at this point in 2023 to check in on their goals and maybe modify them a little bit if they need to do so?
Yeah, Tyler, it's interesting. You talk about the holidays, And as the father of 7 grandchildren, right, I understand what the holidays are like and the gifts and whatnot, and that lull, and really kind of getting back into the basics as we move into the new year. So think about it in this way: new year, new budget, your priorities will change. And look, this is a great time to compare, for example, your take-home pay with your actual expenditures and find out how you can think about cutting back, because you've already alluded to it. You know, we may have a tendency to spend a fair amount of money during the holidays, right? Now, how do we get back on track and have that discipline? So start with that. New year, new budget. Sit down with yourself, you or your significant other, and map out a plan. That's the first thing that I would think about doing.
And what's great too, Aubrey, is that as we're managing our money, we're doing so in an age where technology is having such a great impact across our lives, and that includes in our financial lives too, especially when it comes to banking. How can people take advantage of some of these different technologies that their bank or their other financial institutions may have in place to help them accumulate some of those greater savings over time?
Yeah, so you think about a couple of things. One, a lot of organizations, ours included, have online tools for you to look at budgeting, right? And again, as I alluded to a couple of minutes ago, to do some planning. But the other thing that I would think about here is using those online tools to set up some sort of an automatic savings plan, so that if you have a checking account, as an example, setting up for your pay maybe to go into that savings account and then transferring into your operating account, or if you will, your checking account, enough funds to kind of keep things going during the month. So using those online tools for, again, one, for planning, and then two, setting up some sort of an automatic savings plan so that you can keep that excess and start to build up that, what we call a rainy day fund.
We're joined by Aubrey Lee on today's edition of the Megacast, Senior Vice President at Merrill Lynch Wealth Management, joining us on today's program, looking into our 2023 financial goals and how you can continue to make good on those goals and your resolutions in 2023. And you mentioned kind of recovering from the holiday season. Sometimes that takes a month, or it takes a few months, really to get your finances back on track, your savings back on track after all of that spending between the Thanksgiving holiday and the New Year holiday and all of that, and then getting into 2023 with your expenses coming back into play as well with the new year. So what are some strategies that people are employing to kind of reclaim some of those savings, or maybe even, as you mentioned earlier, reduce some of that spending for the first portion of the new year in order to get back on track financially from how the holidays always kind of take a hit?
Yeah, Tyler, great question. A couple of things that I would mention. There might be a tendency during the holidays to overspend, and that may manifest itself with you having a little bit more debt via credit cards than you anticipated. So let's suppose that's the case. Map out a strategy now to reduce that credit card debt, to bring it back in line with what you are able to service, if you will, on a monthly basis. So that's the one thing, is, again, part of that planning process, Tyler, is to take a look at the debt and manage that credit card debt. That would be one thing. The second thing is something that, frankly, I've heard about recently as well, and that's called a no-spend strategy, right? It's a way for you to kind of do a hard reset, to maybe look at some of the things that you're spending money on that may not be necessities. So think about that cup of coffee you enjoy every morning at your favorite coffee shop, right? Nothing wrong with that. It might seem to be something simple. Rather than maybe going to the coffee shop, do you make your coffee at home, right? Think about eating out on a regular basis. Maybe you bring that type of spending back and eat at home more often, so that more that no spend strategy, again, is a hard reset for you to maybe think about over the next couple of months to bring those expenses right back in line with what your budget can bear and allow you again to save money.
And it's a great way, too, to really get back to, as you mentioned, as you said, hard reset, to really get back to understanding the basics of your financial output and what you do need to be spending money on, what you can maybe be reducing spending money on, and then being able to form a strategy from the money you have coming in each month and the money you have coming out each month to then go forward with your savings and re-strategize with those at your financial institutions of choice to create greater savings for yourself and a better strategy going forward. Because as we mentioned earlier, you can make these New Year's resolutions, but as time goes on, as circumstances change, you have to be, especially when it comes to your finances, looking into those goals that you've set. Are they still attainable? Could you maybe even surpass those goals and do something even better in your current situation? So those hard resets, I would imagine, can kind of be a healthy way to reassess where you're at any given time.
No question about it. And I'll go back to, Tyler, something you said a few minutes ago about the online tools that are available at different organizations. If I ask the average person, what do you spend your money on? He or she may or may not be able to tell me that. But a lot of organizations will categorize your spending for you so that they show you what you pay on utilities, how much you're expending into entertainment, how much are you expending into travel, how much are you expending into, fuel. And now you start to categorize and you can see exactly where you're spending money on. And so if that is out of balance, you can use that reset to kind of bring things back into alignment, if you will. And again, a lot of organizations, ours included, will have those type of tools available for you. And then the other thing I would say, Tyler, is building that discipline. We talk about working out at the beginning of the year, right? And we do that for a couple of months. If you have that habit of sitting down on a regular basis and looking at your budget month in and month out, it now becomes something that becomes a habit that you will stick to over a long period of time.
And you got to build those habits over time, too. You've got to develop those skills.
Yeah.
You got to develop that routine of, okay, it's the end of the month, it's the 25th, it's the 30th, it's the first day of the new month. Let me look back at that budget and see where I'm at and what sort of progress I've made, even looking back a couple of months to see how those trends have changed so that you're keeping updated in these different ways. And often, when it comes to your savings, when it comes to thinking about retirement and down the line and emergency situations, often that great equalizer can be your investments. So let's talk about this from a couple different angles. First, let's talk about how people should be assessing their investments, both short-term and long-term, and then how assessing those goals with a professional can give them that extra bit of a boost to really put their best foot forward.
Yeah, Tyler, they go hand in hand. This is the time of year, and frankly, throughout the year, you should be looking at how you're deploying your investments in light of where we are in the economy and what we think will or won't happen, right? And so one is to establish those goals. And you already said it. There are short-term goals that you want to be thinking about. There are intermediate term goals that you want to be thinking about. And then there are long-term goals that you want to be thinking about. Now, let's quantify that. Short-term goals, typically 1 to 2 years or less. Intermediate term goals, 2 to 5 years. Long-term goals, for example, retirement, could be 10, 15, 20 years out. So you want to be taking a look at that. And you said it already. Doing that with the help of an investment professional that can sit down with you and help you to understand and you to let them know where you're trying to get to. And they'll map out a strategy that will take you from point A, Tyler, to point B, and again, help you along the way. This is a good time, if you've not done that, to again, engage someone or maybe use some of the online tools that are available and to map out a strategy for you for yourself, if you will.
It's run by
Great question. I love that question.
Yeah, and it's something that we really do need to be thinking about as investors of all different ages, looking into both our short-term and our long-term goals. Both of those can really be assisted by bringing an expert in, but also by doing some of your own research as well in that education too. We often speak on this show to stock market coach Jason Brown from the Brown Report, who really emphasizes that you should be talking to professionals, but you should also be looking into some of this information yourself, so that when you're having those conversations, you're having really well-informed conversations and understanding kind of where they are directing you, or better yet, suggesting that you go with your investments and with your finances. Just how much of an impact can it have when you're seeing a financial professional like yourself to come in with some of that knowledge yourself and be able to have really well-informed, detailed conversations on where you're at financially and where you want to be going.
Yeah, and Tyler, I mean, you are spot on. Working with a financial professional can actually be quantified in terms of the delta between working on your own and working with a professional. Now, I won't lay out what that quantifiable delta is, if you will. I will say this, and you said it very well. It is really critical for you as an investor to spend time understanding, learning how the markets work, how the economy works, how they work hand in hand together, and how you invest in a way that takes advantage of where we are at now, where we may be in 3 to 5 years, and where we might be in 10, 15, or 20 years. But that education piece is critical. Spend time learning and understanding, and then that allows you to have a more thoughtful conversation with that investment professional.
Aubrey, we appreciate your insight and all your advice today. Before we let you go another minute or so, anything else that we haven't discussed that would be important for our audience to consider at this time?
Yeah, my dad had a saying, today is the first day of the rest of your life. What you did before today doesn't matter. That's come and gone. But what you do today moving forward can be critical. So I'll leave you with this. Start where you stand.
Well, Aubrey, we appreciate your joining us. Thank you so much for your time this morning, and have a great rest of your day.
You bet. Appreciate you. Once again, nice job. Enjoyed having a nice conversation with you.
Thank you very much, Aubrey. We'll take a break here on the Megacast. When we come back, traffic deaths across the U.S. have been on the rise since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. Why that is the case, why these numbers have jumped so dramatically between 2019 and the present day, and what you can do to help protect yourselves and others on the roads each and every day. That's coming up next. We'll be joined by First Lieutenant Mike Shaw from the 2nd District of the Michigan State Police. That's coming up next. You're watching and listening to the Megacast.
Ronnie started doing prescription pills at the age of 15, and by 19, he died. If your child is struggling with drug use, try not to be too proud to reach out for help. Don't be worried about what the neighbor will think or your family. Just get your child the help they need. Sometimes it's the hard road to take, but the hard road is nothing compared to living with the fact that your child is no longer with you.
Hope and help at drugfree.org.
When you have a gambling problem, you have a money problem. Don't let your gambling cause you financial hardship. If you or someone you love is struggling with gambling, we can help. Get free confidential counseling and win your life back. Learn more at michigan.gov/problemgambling.
Watch Civic Center TV with our brand new live captions. To turn on live captions, go to civiccentertv.com and click Watch Live. In your web browser, click on the Options tab in the top right and find the Accessibilities tab. Then just switch on live captions to heighten your enjoyment of our local programming. Thank you so much for watching Civic Center TV.
When the temperatures are chilly, being together warms the soul. Keep the winter fun going. Help protect yourself and those around you by keeping your COVID-19 vaccines up to date.
Welcome back to the Megacast, our live daily TV, radio, and streaming show talking about all things Michigan. I'm Tyler Kieft. Learn more on our website, civiccentertv.com/megacast, where you'll find information on all of our partnering stations across the Great Lakes State, including our co-flagship My Michigan TV, and find all of our full shows and each individual interview segment on demand as well. civiccentertv.com/megacast is the place to go for that. Well, the reports have been out that the number of traffic incidents in the U.S. is on the rise and has been since throughout the pandemic. Ever since 2019 and onward, we've seen the number of traffic incidents as well as traffic deaths be on the rise across the U.S., including having an impact here in the state of Michigan. Joining us now to talk about that and what you can do to keep yourself safe on Michigan's roadways is First Lieutenant Mike Shaw, the Public Information Officer for the 2nd District of the Michigan State Police. Lieutenant, thanks for being with us today.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, glad to have you on to talk about this because it's an interesting situation, but it's also a really concerning situation that we're in, not just here in Michigan, but throughout the U.S. on our roadways. Since 2019, the number of traffic incidents has continued to rise, but even more concerning is the number of deadly car crashes has risen as well. According to a graphic presented by Fox News from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, in 2019, the number of deadly car crashes, 27,019, and now in 2022, the full calendar year, 31,785. And you think about that, even the jump of about 1,000 between 2019 and 2020, when not as many people theoretically were on the road because of the pandemic, there's been a lot of factors that go into this. What are some of those factors, that, at least here in the state of Michigan, that we've seen contribute to more incidents on the road and more deadly incidents among those?
So here in Michigan, we've seen the same thing as the national average has. And for us, about 1,100 in 2022 that are 2021, 1,100 fatalities in the state of Michigan. All of these fatalities are all preventable. They could, we kind of talk about gun violence a little bit and we talk about the loss of life, but think about it, 1,100 people in the state of Michigan that died on our roadways that if somebody would have done something different, it wouldn't have happened. So we need to kind of get back into that mentality. These are traffic crashes. These are, they're not accidents. Somebody did something that they shouldn't have done out there to cause these crashes as we see them out there. I like to call them the big three since I represent the Detroit area, and they're pretty simple. And it's excessive speed, following too closely, and driving distracted. If we could eliminate those three behaviors, we'd probably eliminate quite a few, if not all, of these preventable crashes.
And look, I said it already, we had less drivers out on the road during the COVID-19 pandemic. That has been statistically represented over the last couple of years, especially for the year 2020 and in 2021, as people were mostly at home, staying safe in the bulk of the pandemic. But there were still drivers out on the road, and as people came back onto the roadways and life returned to some semblance of normalcy, that did change the conditions once again. It didn't just hard reset to where we were at pre-pandemic. So how did the onset of those drivers going back onto the road with the pandemic drivers combine to create a more tense situation out there that has led to some of these deadly incidents?
So for us, and we're Michiganders, so we don't like to admit that we're not very good drivers. So I being the Motor City and all, we all like to think that we're all the best drivers. But some of the behaviors that our troopers saw pre-pandemic, it was starting during the pandemic, and then even after. When we're talking about excessive speed, we're not talking like a couple miles over the speed limit. Our troopers are regularly stopping people for exceeding the speed limit by going 110, 115. In our last campaign, our highest speed total was 142. Can you imagine 142 miles an hour driving with other drivers? So we saw a lot of the responsibility that drivers used to have that kind of lost it during the pandemic. And then we added other drivers out there as well that maybe hadn't gotten behind the wheel for a while. It's just, it's a recipe for disaster. That particular driving behavior in itself is just, it's just really driving the problems that we're seeing out there.
And those excessive speeds, it's basic physics. It's going to have a bigger impact if you're coming to a hard stop, whether it's yourself slamming on the brakes in a tough situation or colliding with something or someone else on the roadways. But even for those that are just a little ways over the speed limit, and some may operate under the mindset of it's just 5 or 10 miles per hour above the limit. What really could that do in a dangerous situation? But a significant impact on outcomes when there are accidents or there are incidents on our roadways.
And it does. And I think it's a combination of the two, right? So usually you get those 7 to 10 over, but they're also following too closely. And we've all seen them on the roadways, right? As you're driving along, somebody just either jams on the brake or they jam on the brake and dart off to the shoulder of the roadway because they couldn't stop in time to hit the one in front of them. You combine that with distracted driving. We even see those small fender benders that happen in rush hour traffic because somebody is driving, traffic is slow in rush hour, so you kind of slow down in front, and then naturally everybody's like this, right, looking at your phones and doing everything else. And as soon as, you kind of see traffic going forward, you kind of hit the gas and then realize it hasn't, and then boom, you run into the person in front of you. So a lot of those things that we're looking at, those combination of behaviors with that excessive speed, with that distracted driving, is what's causing all of our crashes out there. There's not anything really accidental about it. There's always somebody did something, and usually it's both drivers that are involved in these crashes that did something to kind of lead to it.
Joining us on the Megacast is First Lieutenant Mike Shaw, the 2nd District of the Michigan State Police Public Information Officer, with us talking about the increase in U.S. traffic deaths over the last couple of years and throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, leading all the way back to 2020 from a rise in 2019. And it's been said in other states across the union. In fact, in the article I was referencing earlier, Chelsea Hodgson, a patrol sergeant for the Washington State Police, had also mentioned that staffing comes into play too on the patrolling side to try to address some of these issues. So we know that the Michigan State Police hasn't been immune to some of the staffing issues that we've seen in other agencies here statewide as well as across the United States, but nonetheless, it's still out there patrolling our roads, making sure that our roadways are as safe as possible. But how does that factor into addressing some of these issues, that need for staff to really address these problem behaviors amongst drivers, including the education side of things?
And that's really what we're keying on now. This is the educational part, right? When we sit down here, we talk about these issues. But there also has to be an enforcement angle too, because I used to say some people, you go up there and talk to them and say, hey, the reason I stopped you today is your speed. I clocked you at 85 and a 70. Any reason why you're going so fast today? Nope, just not paying attention. Okay, be careful out there, slow it down. And usually that's enough. But some people, they need it written down for them sometimes and need to go through the court process to really understand that their driving behaviors aren't safe for themselves, their families, or others. So it's got to be a combination of the two of why we're doing it, because we get a little pushback, right? Well, don't you guys have anything better to do than go out there and do traffic enforcement? And they're right, we do. We have a lot of things we could do. We'd be solving violent crimes, we'd be patrolling our townships, stuff like that. But unfortunately, 11,000 people died on Michigan roads. So no, we have to take care of that issue as well, as long as all the other stuff that we could do. So if drivers would help us out by using those great driving behaviors that we're talking about, driving the speed limit, opening up that distance between you and the car in front of you and not watching Netflix while you're driving, that would lead us to be able to do something different.
Yeah, a lot of what can be done to reduce the number of traffic deaths here in the state of Michigan and across the union comes down to individual drivers and also to that education angle, as you talked about from the state police. Lieutenant Shaw, at the state police level, of course, most of your patrol on the roadways is on our highways, but also you're partnering with local law enforcement agencies as well to provide some assistance. But in terms of what the state police is saying to these local agencies, what can they be doing better, or could they be focusing on better yet to help reduce some of these incidents in their local area as we're trying to address these area by area in the state of Michigan?
So we work great with our local and our county partners. So through our Office of Highway Safety Planning. There's grants available for speed enforcement, different enforcement campaigns to go through there. So it is a group effort across the state. So in different parts of the state, depending on where you are, we may be the only law enforcement agency around, especially when you get up to the UP. And like you talked about with staffing, there were some staffing issues. There were some departments that during COVID decided they weren't going to do as much traffic enforcement as they did before, just for the fact of, not wanting to interact with people or put their people in those positions. So I think a lot of people took advantage of that as well with their excessive speeding was, hey, maybe the cops aren't out there as much as they used to be. So, going a little bit faster isn't going to really hurt anybody. When we found out then, yeah, actually it is. It was causing a lot more fatalities out there because, our cars are great. I mean, the automakers make very safe cars compared to where they used to be. But if you're going that fast and you hit somebody, like you said before, physics is physics, and you're not going to survive those type of crashes.
We're joined on today's program by First Lieutenant Mike Shaw, the Public Information Officer for the 2nd District of the Michigan State Police, which includes oversight here in the Oakland County area. Lieutenant Shaw, just another minute or so before we'll have to say goodbye and move on for today. Anything else or any lasting advice or words of wisdom for those out on our roadways in Oakland County and here in this area of Michigan?
So there's a couple of things that you can do to avoid those. I always tell people that you can't leave home at 8 o'clock if you got to be to work at 7:45. So you got to kind of plan ahead, right? You got to leave early, leave yourself that extra time so that way you don't have to drive that excessive speed to make it to work. My dad always used to say, work was there before you were born. It's going to be there while you live, and it's going to be there long after you're dead. So we need to kind of think about where we're going from A to B. That's all we're doing. It's not personal. It's just a route to go from A to B from one spot to the other. It's not NASCAR. We're not getting paid to go out there. Rubbing isn't racing or anything like that on the freeway system or even on our secondary roads because these problems are everywhere. It's just taking your time, being nice, be polite, drive the speed limit, give that extra distance. And if somebody kind of cuts in front of you because of that, give them a wave and not worry about it. So it's kind of that driver behavior. I always say the biggest cause of traffic crashes is that person that looks in you in that rear view mirror. So that's us. That's our personal responsibility to be a better driver.
Lieutenant Shaw, appreciate your time and appreciate your insight today. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
First Lieutenant Mike Shaw, the Public Information Officer with the 2nd District of the Michigan State Police, which represents and oversees our area of Michigan here in Southeast Michigan and Oakland County, where we originate our broadcast every single day. We'll take a break on the Megacast. On the other side, it was a big night last night for the federal government with the president's 2nd State of the Union address. Also, a lot going on here in the state of Michigan, including a potentially new primary date for the 2024 presidential election. We'll talk about those topics and more with Dave Dulio from Oakland University up next on the Megacast.
Can I ask you a question? Why do you want to get the COVID-19 vaccine?
I don't like getting sick. The virus will die. It will be easy to not catch it. Keep my family safe and keep playing soccer. Because I love being vaccinated.
What's your hope for everyone?
I hope everybody gets the vaccine to keep safe and strong. Be happy, having fun everywhere. Everyone stay safe and hope you get the vaccine.
1 in 4 Michigan homes has high levels of radon, a naturally occurring radioactive gas known to cause lung cancer. It doesn't matter where you live or what type of home you have. You won't even know it's there unless you test. So don't wait. Testing is cheap and easy. And if there's a problem, it's simple to fix. Visit michigan.gov/radon to learn more.
We took action. Will you?
Hello, nose. My nose knows is when somebody uses the bathroom. Mom, Polly didn't flush. Ooh, I smell cookies.
I smell an A+. How could my nose be running when it stays on my face?
Our noses know if those sniffles are just a cold, allergies, or COVID-19. So swab it. Test it. It's good to know.
Welcome back to the Megacast, our live daily TV, radio, and streaming show talking about all things Michigan. I'm Tyler Kieft. You can learn more about our program by visiting our website on civiccentertv.com/megacast, where you'll find links to more information on all of our partnering stations here in Oakland County and across the state of Michigan, including our co-flagship My Michigan TV, and find all of our full segments and each individual interview on demand as well. civiccentertv.com/megacast for all of that. Plenty going on in state and local politics here in Michigan, as well as across the union, including the president's second State of the Union address last night. Joining us now to talk about that is Dave Dulio, professor of political science and the director of the Center for Civic Engagement at Oakland University. Dave, thanks for being with us again.
Hey, Tyler, thanks for having me.
Yeah, glad to have you back on with us on a really important day following the president's second State of the Union address at a critical time when his approval ratings are continuing to be kind of up and down, and even a new poll coming out this week about his outlook in the Democratic Party, with many in the party saying they would rather he not run in 2024 at all. How much of an impact was that State of the Union set to have on those sort of metrics and the way that he's being perceived, not just across the union at this time, but even within the Democratic Party?
Yeah, Tyler, I think the biggest takeaway for me with the president's speech last night is it was the first re-election speech for 2024. He said, let's finish the job a bunch of times. And that seems to me to be a real, likely theme for a re-election bid that we're told is going to be announced in the next weeks or months. I'm not sure how much Joe Biden last night changed the narrative about his presidency or got people to all of a sudden think that he's doing a bang up job. As you mentioned, his approval ratings are still underwater. He's at, 43% approval. But the bigger factor, I think, last night is a lot of the folks that could run against him were in that room. And, whether they're senators or cabinet members, the vice president, right? I mean, it was always a long shot for us to think that one of those folks, at least in the administration, certainly not a sitting vice president or even, Secretary Buttigieg has been rumored to be a possible presidential contender in 2024. Certainly if Biden doesn't run, but, who in that room runs against him after a speech without any major stumbles, or at least that we, are out of the ordinary for Joe Biden, right? We know that he's got sort of a clunky delivery at times, but last night's speech was pretty typical Biden, and I wonder if it sort of sealed up the Washington establishment part of the party not going to challenge him. Now, there's a governor out there who wants to do something, but right now it's Biden's if he wants it.
And it's interesting too because of the enthusiasm he came in that speech with, and the number of different points that he touched on that are positives for the Democratic Party and things they have been putting at the top of their priority list and have made some progress on. But a lot of the criticism that's come forth for President Biden's speech from last night was some of the issues that were not addressed, particularly the gripes he was getting from the Republican Party on national security and not addressing the troops directly, not going into a little bit more details about our defense going forward and his plans with our defense going forward, including support of Ukraine. And then, of course, the situation at the southern border, always going to be a huge sticking point for the Republican Party, but also going into more about his plans for immigration reform, too, that kind of reach beyond the Democratic side of the aisle. So in terms of those issues and the ways that he addressed those, how much of an impact could that potentially have, too, on the changing narrative around the president's standing in his party and as a potential candidate in 24 also?
Yeah, I think in some respects, the speech last night was typical State of the Union, where it's a laundry list of items that the president wants to see enacted. And some are major issues and some are, relatively minor. I mean, he spent, I'd have to go back and look at the clock, but it seemed to me that he spent more time talking about resort fees at hotels and how those stick it to consumers than talking about the Chinese spy balloon. And I think that when, if there were, and I don't think there were many, but, the persuadable voters out there, I think that much of the speech is going to be forgettable because, the president can talk as much as he wants about resort fees and baggage fees on airlines. But, when folks go to the grocery store, those are the prices that are going to, sort of punch them in the face. And I think that's what it, that speech didn't change reality for a lot of Americans, right? When they go to the gas pump, when they go to the grocery store, they are still fighting inflation every day. And I think that for a lot of folks, that the speech will be, even though it was pretty typical, I think will be quickly forgotten.
Yeah, all eyes are on 2024. Former President Donald Trump already putting his hat in the race several weeks ago. In a speech at Mar-a-Lago, as Dave mentioned, the President of the United States, Joe Biden, expected to put his hat in the ring here within the next few weeks as well, and still plenty to come on 2024 at the federal level. At the statewide level, Michigan could potentially have a huge impact on 2024 in the primary season. The state legislature did pass legislation, and the governor signed it in early February to move the state's primary date up in 2024. However, there are some special considerations with that because work still needs to be done in order to get that enacted in time for the 2024 primary. Where is that at, and how much could that have an impact on Michigan's influence in 2024?
So the nuts and bolts of it are that the law that was passed and signed by the governor won't go into effect for about 90 days after the end of the legislature. So when the legislature adjourns, sine die is the formal term for it. When they adjourn, which usually happens in December, laws from the previous year go into effect after 90 days. Well, that would be after the scheduled primary date of February 27th. So there are two options. One, which isn't going to happen, the legislature could vote for immediate effect, where it would, if they had the votes, they could make it go into effect immediately rather than waiting those 90 days. Well, that would take a bunch of Republican votes, which they're not going to get because the February 27th date puts Republicans in a sticky situation because it would violate the rules that the Republican National Committee has set forth for the Republican presidential calendar. Now, they could avoid all this, the state government could, if the legislature adjourns sometime in November, where they would count those 90 days then, and it would go into effect, the law would go into effect before that 27th of February date. So I think that, there's a lot that remains to be seen. And in terms of impact, there's a lot, again, left to I guess the best answer is it depends. It depends if Joe Biden runs again, which again is I think everybody expects him to. But if it's Biden and nobody else, well, it's pretty meaningless, right? Because it's a fait accompli, and it's just the usual sitting president running unopposed. Now, if there is a competitive Democratic primary, Michigan's going to have a huge role. And I think that we've seen that over the last decades and decades of the states that go in that early window of the presidential primary season have such a big impact, not necessarily in terms of picking a winner, but shaping the race and shaping the dynamics of presidential politics. So that could still be the case. On the Republican side, there's a whole lot left up in the air, just because we don't know how the RNC will handle the new date. Will they penalize the state party in Michigan, maybe with loss of delegates to the national convention? That's a wait and see game.
Yeah, and all this is going to have a big impact on 2024, as you mentioned. If that date does move up, that puts them right in the front of the pack, and we have seen in the past that Iowa, that New Hampshire, that South Carolina, those are the tone setters, and they're not necessarily predictive of who will get those nominations. We saw in the last couple of elections, candidates come from far behind to come back and win those nominations, including our past two sitting presidents, Biden and Trump. So,
well, with Biden, right? You mentioned South Carolina in the early window last time, and it saved Biden's nomination, right? I mean, he wasn't going anywhere, and then South Carolina rolls around, and he has this great victory, and that sent him off, and he's running.
Yeah, we typically see, especially when it's an open primary where you have a number of candidates vying for those final few positions late in the primary season, and certainly for that final nomination at the convention level, that those first couple of primaries are really where you see the bulk of the field eliminated. They don't last very long. They're not sticking around for several primaries. Those first 3 to 5 are really where you get the tone set, and these candidates that are low in the polling or low in the results in those first 5 or so primaries, they're getting off the ballot at that point and putting their hats in the ring of other candidates, and that has a big impact on them too.
That's right. That's what I was talking about, shaping the dynamics of the race, right? Where, the early states, what they really do is winnow the field, right? It may start with, and we've seen it in the last 2 presidential cycles where there are just more than a dozen in 2016 on the Republican side, and I think 17 on the Democratic side in 2020. That start out in this race to the nomination, and really by the end of the first month or so, it's significantly fewer candidates. So those first few primaries really help shape the field for the rest of the country.
Yeah, next several months things will start to develop it, and we'll start to get some eyes on 2024 and see how the stories behind that presidential election will really be beginning to develop. And then we're just a little bit over a year away from the action of the primary season beginning for the 2024 election. As all this is happening, it's a ton to unpack, Dave. So in terms of the Center for Civic Engagement at Oakland University, what sort of activities maybe are already on the docket or may be considered for the next year and the next 2 years leading up to 2024 and that critical presidential election?
Yeah, certainly as we get into the presidential cycle, probably starting in the fall, we'll do a lot of election-focused work. Coming up in the next couple of months, though, we've got a couple things that'll be on the docket, including one next week. The 22nd of this month is the 1-year anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. So we're going to get some OU foreign policy and international relations experts together for a virtual discussion Wednesday, the 15th of February at 7 p.m. and go through, sort of where we are after a year of this international conflict. And then in March, we're going to tackle the issue of the unfortunate rising instances of anti-Semitism across America. And so folks, as you know, Tyler, can check both of those out at oakland.edu/CCE.
Again, oakland.edu/CCE. You can also follow them on Facebook, facebook.com/OUCCE for more information. Dave, thank you as always for joining us.
You got it. Thanks, Tyler.
Dave Dulio from Oakland University School of Political Science and also the Center for Civic Engagement on today's program with us. That will do it for this Wednesday edition of the Megacast. We'll return soon with new episodes.